Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Topical Talkology. Morning, Theo.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Oh, very good today.
Okay,
got to the
great.
gym nice and early.
And now the niceties are out of the way. Let's get started. So one of the reasons we're actually doing this podcast is because while we were just having a chat over a coffee, we discussed we discussed karma as a topic, because I was speaking to someone in the gym today, and he used the word karma, and I actually referred to it karma. And don't get me wrong, in theory I actually believe in karma. I believe if you do something bad, something then bad will happen to you. However, when people use karma, I just find that as an excuse to actually hand that responsibility to someone else to do something about it. Isn't that how we started off? And then you said, actually, I think we should record this. So this is where we are. Because one thing I have found, when someone does something bad, you say, let's leave it to karma, you are actually, what you're doing is passing that responsibility to someone else further on down the line for them to actually get justice.
Well, someone else is going to be the instrument of karma, isn't it?
That's correct. Because karma in effect means act or action.
Although one could say that ideally the point is this, that you shouldn't do bad things, you shouldn't do bad actions on purpose, but someone else, being the instrument of the karma, could actually do it subconsciously, or something could happen quite innocently which harms them, because the original person who deserved the karma in the first place was doing something bad. So maybe the lesson is that karma should happen automatically without conscious will to do harm.
I suppose, having been in the police many years ago, I've always been and have been and still am a great believer in justice. And it's like this whole Me Too thing. And when people actually use karma as for Harvey Weinstein. However, I think that the people at Backley at that time, who 20 years later are coming out of the woodwork and saying this, if they'd taken it upon themselves right at the beginning and actually done what was right, he would not have then hurt so many different women. Correct. Further on down the line. Karma only happened because he was allowed to. Karma happened 20 years later only because it was allowed to happen for 20 years.
You could argue, of course, that karma is going to come and work against these women who actually subconsciously did something bad to other women by letting it happen in the first place.
That's a little bit deep, isn't it?
Well, you just said that by not bringing it up, by not addressing it, not standing up for themselves initially, but effectively being whores to their career, effectively, they allowed this behaviour to continue. And indeed, I forget the name of the actor, but Ian McKellen, who was Dumbledore. Sir Ian McKellen. He actually said on women's CVs...
He was not Dumbledore.
Wasn't he?
He was in Lord of the Rings.
What was
he? He was the wizard.
The same kind of thing, the wizened wizard. But he said that on women's CVs, women would put DRR, which was short for Directors' Rights Respected. So it was, this culture was innate. It was part of the community. It was part of what was going on, and women were playing by those rules with completely in full awareness of what they were doing, and they were taking advantage of it, and therefore it's the pinnacle of hypocrisy to start backpedaling just because the media has given people another chance for people to jump on the bandwagon of not really justice, but another version of identitism. Because that's all it is. It's another cause. It's another cause celebrity.
In fact, what's that lady's name who's known as a famous feminist? Is it Germaine Greer? I can't remember her name. And actually, she's gone the other way around in terms of not supporting the Me Too campaign. I think she actually went and said something along the lines as actually it's really had no effect. Everybody knew what was actually going on all these times before. And the thing is, if you actually want women to be seen as victims, then actually that's exactly what's actually being created. And even when we talked about when in the Oscars, people are getting sick and people just got sick and tired of this whole Me Too campaign and things like this, because it's become political and it's have the worst ever ratings.
Because it doesn't mean
people
anything.
Don't want it doesn't mean anything.
If you really want to represent, if you really want to be a representative of a group which you feel is being badly treated, you have to do it right now.
Yeah.
For instance, just before the weekend, Priti Patel decided that she didn't want to be referred to as a representative of the I forget what it was, ethnic minority group, let's say Asian ethnic minority group. And of course she was a conservative minister who, as far as I understand, stepped beyond her authority and did things she shouldn't, and therefore had to resign, otherwise she'd have been sacked. But that's it in a nutshell as far as the media told us. Now, of course, what she's done, and my gut feeling about this, is she's just trying to step back into the limelight so she can start building up her career again, which she shattered through her own stupidity in the first place. Without realizing,
so some people would call that karma.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you do something wrong, but the thing is, you do something wrong, it gets handled. It got handled immediately, instantaneously.
But what's she doing now? What she's doing now, she's just jumping on a bandwagon of identitism again, because she, quite frankly, she couldn't care less about the Asians and ethnic minorities, because if she did, she would stand up for who she is and say, I am who I am, and I deserve equal treatment, not actually, I don't want to be referred to as that, I'm just English. Of course not. I mean, look, she's an Asian lady. I mean, you can't deny it. And the fact is, Martin Luther King, same thing. He had to accept his black roots before he could stand up for black justice. The suffragettes at the beginning of the 20th century. We are women. We demand rights for women. They didn't say we don't want to be referred to as women.
But even the suffragettes, if my history serves me correctly, because it's been a long time ago since I did it, they went from being quite violent, like a lot of these type of organisations. And when World War II broke out, was it World War II? It was World War One. When World War One broke out, and the men went to fight, they then went and took their jobs and played a supportive role, and that's when they actually got recognised for their efforts, rather than actually being
for the violence,
going through a violent. Same with Nelson Mandela. As you know, he was in effect labelled a terrorist by both Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and yet in his death, you've got Barack Obama and David Cameron taking selfies.
Exactly the same for Martin McGuinness. So what these people do, the clever ones at least, they mature. They go through the emotional anger and wanting to depose people violently, and then they realise that's not going to work. And then the ones with enough intellectual capacity and flexibility will then say, we'll do what's necessary. It doesn't mean they've changed. It means they're doing what's necessary because they think that will now work.
But that's not the case in any sort of form of business. It's actually getting your foot through the front door, and you've got to be able to present yourself an image where someone's going to invite you in through the front door. Mm-hmm. If you look like if someone comes to your house and someone looks like a real scruff, you're gonna your amygdala's going to start flaring up, and you're going to say, actually, I'm not going to come in. You've got to present the image that's going to allow you to be invited in. That's when you can actually make change. But so many people want to do so many different things from the outside. It's like firing one of those potato guns at a train and expecting to have an impact. It's not.
Correct. You can't change the system unless you're part of it. You're absolutely right. One thing that of course really interested me when you mentioned the word karma is because you also knew that it has a religious origin.
It's used as a religious origin, but the thing is, karma can be interpreted in so many different ways. Even the 10 Commandments of "Thou shalt not kill" or "Thou shalt not commit adultery" is just a rule setting against a form of karma of not doing anything wrong.
So therefore, actually, karma is simply another religious type of rule, which people found in the people found made society work better because people would be nicer to each other, less violent to each other, less unfair to each other, and they would just use this abstract form of some kind of justice ready to pounce on people.
Karma is just a way of actually sort of making people fear the sublime, I suppose.
So therefore, actually, if you think about it, karma doesn't exist at all. If you think about it, because it's just...
not from a rational point of view, but from a spiritual point of view, it does.
Absolutely. So it's an abstract idea which has been found to affect the behavior of humans in a good way, which is why it's persisted.
Well, that's just a normal moral code of ethics, which is why religion has its place. And but people have also got to.
Doesn't mean it's true, though, is it?
Yeah. But people have also got to choose not to ignore that it's going to actually allow it to happen to someone else, because the fact is that if someone does something bad to one person and that is their pattern of behaviour, they'll go and do it in someone else.
So karma is just a sedative for those who've had their physical or psychological health injured.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you meet someone else further down the line, they may not be willing to take the same crap, because look at when you say, look at that guy, what was his name, Bernie Madoff, I think it was, who ran the largest Ponzi scheme. The thing is, you could say he got karma. He got 150 years in prison.
Karma, you know what the real?
Hold on a second. He got 150 years in prison, and the thing is, he's not going to live for 150 years. Pretty much know that. But you know what? He pretty much had a pretty good life on other people's money before he got put into prison.
For most of his life, you're right. But you see, the real karma, therefore, is people liking you or not liking you. If you have to make sure that you fit in and you are liked, then you'll do better than expected. If you don't fit in and you're not liked, you'll do much worse than expected.
Okay, I think we need to clarify something here in terms of likability, because there's a huge difference about being likable and being nice and being approachable and those sort of things. And I've said to you, I've actually created a document that you can actually have. But it's also another different thing of looking to fit in as a people pleaser, because people will not have any respect for you. You've got to be authentic in terms of being aware of what your personality's like, using it to your advantage, and being authentic about who you are. If you're looking to be somebody else, people are going to see that falseness in you. All right.
It depends how good an actor you are. But
yes,
I agree.
Yeah, but you can only do it for so long.
You see, charm is likability.
Yes, but eventually you'll revert back. You can only be in someone else's personality for approximately about 6 weeks before you naturally start reverting back to your natural.
Well, it depends, because remember what we said, that psychopaths are innately unlikable. They're disagreeable, and therefore people don't like them and they don't get on with them. But a charming psychopath is a nasty person who knows how to be charming, and that is an innate part of their personality. So you're right. I'm just being pedantic here, but there are enough people, and I would class Boris Johnson as one of them, who is a charming psychopath, and that's why people do like him. But nevertheless, enough people see the veil drop, maybe to dislike him enough, which is maybe why he had to drop out of the race first time round and Theresa May got it.
Well, the thing is, and we're just going to. This is just a quick one. For a start, Boris Johnson is not electable right now. When he starts losing a few pounds, you'll know that he's actually going to be making. He's going to be making a push for leadership. But the thing is, if you actually look at the level of people who've actually been elected, because the thing is, it's not about who the best leader is; it's who's the most electable as leader. Because the people who are probably the better people are usually the backroom advisors, if they are not presentable enough for the public. I mean, actually, if you look at somewhere like the States, for example, it's usually the taller candidate who actually gets elected. Same in the UK. And they genuinely don't tend to be overweight. So when you've got someone like Boris Johnson, whose likability is also one of the characteristics is probably attractiveness, he doesn't come across as fairly attractive. When he starts losing weight, and when he starts getting in shape, and when he starts being a bit more well-groomed, rather than that hair all over the place that he sometimes does, you will know that he's actually had an image. You know that he's got an image consultant in place, because he's going to be making a push. This is where you've heard it. All right. Otherwise, he's just not electable.
Yes, fascinating. And talking about the elections, as we said last week, democracy is a complete farce the way it runs, because people are incapable of actually making informed decisions.
Well, we say it's a farce, but it is democracy is an illusion that's been presented to us.
Yes, it is.
But
as most things are.
But I know you think well-constructed dictatorship would work.
No, well, no. There's a big
do?
reason why that will not work. I'm saying that that's potentially a more effective way of leading. And I would say, for instance, that when Ronald Reagan, when Donald Trump goes and movie stars obviously, when Donald Trump goes and meets Kim Jong Un,